Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a nice week. It is Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, that's always greatly appreciated. So this is obviously a sports show on a sports radio station, and we do everything we can to stay local. We talk Pacers. Obviously, it's a lot of Colts right now, a lot of Indiana football. Absolutely no Purdue football because they're awful. But from time to time, things happen that require us to go outside the market. And when something happens for the first time in the history of a sport, in the history of a league that's been around for 78 years, I have to talk about it. With 4 minutes left in the second quarter last night, LeBron James and Bronny James were subbed into the Lakers game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And in that moment, they made history by being the first father-son duo to share the court together in an NBA game. On their first offensive possession, LeBron launched and missed a three. Then on their first defensive possession, Bronny James gave up an easy bucket to Julius Randle. Not off to a great start there. And, as I was perusing the internet, because, the internet represents everybody. Not really, but as I was perusing the internet, there's obviously a major focus on two things. Some people are taking this opportunity of Bronny James and LeBron James playing together to talk about LeBron James's legacy, right? And the longevity that he's shown and how amazing his career has been and how this makes him better than Michael Jordan and all those things. That is part of what people are talking about with this LeBron James, Bronny James historical moment. And then you've got other people out there that are complaining about nepotism, saying things like Bronny James shouldn't even be in the NBA. Bronny James should still be in college at USC, or he should have transferred to Duquesne, or he should be in the G League. Those are the type of things that people are talking about when it comes to Bronny James. Here's my thing. LeBron James is amazing. He's the second greatest basketball player ever, and his longevity is insane. Second, Bronny James was the 55th pick, so this whole nepotism thing doesn't really bother me. So instead of talking about those two things, which were talked about ad nauseum when we all realized that this was going to happen, I would instead like to talk about how incredibly special this is. Okay, and to be fair, this incredible moment doesn't happen without LeBron's longevity or without nepotism, because I don't think that Bronny James is an NBA player quite yet. In the 2 minutes and 40 seconds that LeBron James and Bronny James shared the floor together, man, it was magical. It really was. I wish that I could have been in the building just for those 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Those who watched the game know that the energy in the building, every time one of them touched the ball, the energy just went up. Like, I could feel it at home. Like, I'm just sitting there and, as a guy who isn't really a LeBron fan, but has obviously grown up watching him, like, even watching him in the finals didn't feel like this. Like, there was just a difference in this moment. And there was a feeling that I've never had watching game one of the NBA season. Like, it is truly incredible, the history that was made last night. And you could feel the history in the building with the energy, the way that it went up whenever LeBron James or Bronny James touched the ball, and then the way that it would go back down when they gave the ball to Anthony Davis. Like, I could feel the energy at home. Like, it was incredible. It was incredibly special what happened last night. Bronny James didn't score, sadly, but if he had, he took one shot. He took a three that was contested. Man, if that had gone in, like, the roof would have come off that stadium. Like what we witnessed last night was incredible. Like, the NBA's been around for 78 years, and we're just now seeing this. And we will more than likely never see it again. As I watched last night, as someone who's 24, I was thinking about obviously how special the moment was, but I also couldn't help but not think about my dad. Like I'm incredibly blessed to have the relationship with my dad that I do. And like doing stuff with him now athletically, like that's like feels special to me. Like I remember being in high school playing like pickup basketball with my dad, or we'd go play football 2-hand touch after church on Sundays with a bunch of people at our church. And like that felt special because none of my friends' dads did that. They couldn't, all my buddies' dads were just way older than my dad is. And, like my dad's coming up here in a few weeks. And like, if it's warm, we're going to go and play pickleball where I'm going to wipe the floor with him because I'm way better than he is. I really hope he heard me say that. And that will be special because there's just nothing like doing something that you enjoy with your dad. And for some reason, doing that thing as an adult just feels a little more special. And, there's a lot of conversation about LeBron James and how big of a deal this is for him, right? Because, he was talking about playing with Bronny James when Bronny James was still in high school, right? Like Bronny James was a freshman and LeBron got asked about it, and he was like, yeah, like we definitely have to do this. And there's going to be a lot of focus and attention on LeBron. He was asked a lot of questions last night about what's it like to play with your son, year 22, all that kind of stuff, which are all like very valid questions. But I just want to know, like, how does Bronny James feel? Because like that must have been so surreal. Okay, like he went from playing one-on-one and horse and 21, in the backyard with his dad and with his brother, to being a McDonald's All-American, to having a heart attack at USC last year, to now playing in the NBA. Like last night must have been just an incredibly surreal experience for Bronny. And I'm glad for him. Like, because we're obviously going to talk about LeBron a lot in this because LeBron's still probably the biggest star in the NBA, even though guys like Anthony Edwards are coming along quickly. So we're obviously going to focus on LeBron, but Bronny must have I wish I could know how he felt. Okay, because that must have been just an incredible experience for him. Hopefully the Lakers send him to the G League after this because that's where he belongs, if we're being truly honest about where Bronny is at as a basketball player. He's just not an NBA player quite yet by any stretch of the imagination right now. But last night wasn't about whether or not Bronny James is good enough to play in the NBA. Last night was about this incredibly special moment where one of the best players in the history of basketball got to play with his kid, something that we'd never seen before and will probably never see again. And if you watch the game, you could feel the energy and you could feel how special it was. Okay, but now it's over. And now hopefully the Lakers do the best thing for Bronny and send him down to the G League because that is where he belongs. Coming up, 10:20 here in about 10 minutes, Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. He writes about college football over at CBSSports.com. He's going to join the show. We're going to talk IU football, what happened against Nebraska, what's coming up against Washington, and then we'll get into some other kind of bigger stories there as well. But the Pacers, they play their first game tonight. Can't wait. If you have listened to my show, if you listened to my show during basketball season last year, if you listened to me during the playoffs, you know how much I love the NBA. I cannot wait to watch the Pacers tonight coming off of that Eastern Conference Finals appearance. I know they caught some breaks with injury, but they still made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. They dealt with some injuries themselves. I think the Pacers are going to be better this year. I'm giving out my big NBA takes for the year at some point on the show. Not too sure when I'm going to do that yet, but that's definitely going to happen. I'm hoping that Benedict Mathurin can stay healthy this year. Okay, he's part of why I think the Pacers are going to be better Okay, Mathurin has to improve defensively if he wants to play, but he's like 6'7", 6'8", long. Like, this is a guy who can be a really good defender, right? Like, he's got the size and the intangibles and all those things to do that. The effort just has to be there. And if you've seen Mathurin play at all, like, you know that he's a guy who plays incredibly hard. Incredibly hard. So can't wait to watch him. He showed some legit scoring ability last year, right before he got hurt, right after the All-Star break. So hopefully that shows up a little more consistently this year. You can never have too many go-get-a-bucket guys, and Benedict Mathurin could undoubtedly be that. Jarris Walker, number 8 overall pick from last year. I'm not selling any of my stock. In fact, if you're selling your Jarris Walker stock, just call me. I will gladly buy all of it. He's athletic, 6'8", with a 7'2" wingspan. That is NBA wing size right there. He just screams big wing defender. Like, that is who this guy is. Or that's who this guy could be. And that's what the Pacers really need. Jarris Walker can also handle the ball. He had the ball a lot at Houston. He played point guard in high school, right? That leads into his ability to pass and create and do those things. Because he's so big, long, and athletic, he finishes around the bucket well. He's having to learn to play off the ball, which is always an adjustment for all these young guys that show up in the NBA. And they're like, oh, crap, I am, for the first time in my life, not the best player on the floor. So that's, probably taking in some time to learn. But here's the thing. If Jarris Walker can knock down open shots and he cuts well and he moves the ball well, he's going to play just because of the defensive upside that he has. So I'm not selling any of my Jarris Walker stock. If you're selling yours, I will gladly buy all of it. Andrew Nembhard, another young guy for the Pacers, who was really awesome last year. Okay, this doesn't seem like a flash in the pan type thing. I remember a few years ago when Jalen Brunson was playing for the Dallas Mavericks. Luka goes out. There's a heavy reliance on Brunson, and everyone kind of has this realization of, holy crap, this Brunson guy's really good, right? And then Luka comes back, and Brunson just continued to play well. We got the inverse of that last year in the playoffs from Andrew Nembhard, right? He and Halliburton are playing together to start. Nembhard's knocking down big shots. He's playing good defense. He's doing all these important things. And then game two against the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, Tyrese Halliburton gets hurt. We see Andrew Nembhard on his own those last two games, and we see his game go up another level. Like, this is not a flash in the pan type thing, what we saw from Nembhard late last year. He's tough. He defends. He can shoot. He makes good decisions with the ball. Hard not to like this guy. Last year was only his second year in the league. I'm sure he got better in the offseason. Like, those three guys alone are why I expect for the Pacers to be better this year. Plus, this is a young team, one of the youngest rosters in the NBA still. They were really young last year. They're now a year older. Some of these players are going to get better because that's just kind of what happens the more that you do something. Halliburton, he has room to get better despite being the Pacers' best player. They've got a ton of depth. Pascal Siakam, they're going to have him for the full year this year, which is awesome. But the depth of this Pacers team, it's my favorite thing about them. Okay? Look, the regular season's here, but let's be honest, we care about the playoffs. That's what we're expecting from this Pacers team. I've got a prediction for that when I do my big NBA takes for the year, probably at 10:40. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But we're all looking forward to the playoffs, and this Pacers team feels like it's built for the playoffs with the amount of depth, with the amount of guys that they have that can contribute in a playoff series. Okay, because of that depth, they can play multiple styles, and that's really what you need in the playoffs. Pistons, Pacers tonight in Detroit. Tip is at 7 o'clock. Pacers first game of the year. The Pacers are favored by only 4.5. That feels like free money, but I don't know. Betting the NBA regular season is not my specialty, so I wouldn't take my word on that. The Pistons, multiple young players that I like: Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson. A lot of guys really young that I like. We'll see if those guys can finally put it together, and we'll see if the Pistons can win more than 20 games this year. Um, but they're interesting. Excited to watch the Pistons and Pacers tonight. That game starts at 7. Also excited to watch the Indiana Hoosiers on Saturday. Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. He's set to join me when we come back here in about 4 minutes. We're going to talk Indiana's dominant win over Nebraska. We're going to look ahead to Indiana's game against Washington, and then we'll get into some of the bigger storylines like Georgia beating Texas. Who is the best team in the country? Is it Oregon? Because it feels like no one's really talking about Oregon, even though they beat Ohio State a couple weeks ago. All those topics coming your way when Shehan Jeyarajah joins the show here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for listening, no matter how you're listening. Joining me now is Shehan Jeyarajah. He covers college football for CBS Sports, writes a ton of great articles. You can find all of them over at cbssports.com. Shehan, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Dude, of course, man. I love talking college football with you. So I'm very curious. Obviously, Indiana hosts Nebraska on Saturday. It was kind of seen as the first real competition that Indiana had to face this year. How did your view of Indiana change over the course of that game? Because they just throttled what I think is a pretty good Nebraska team.
Well, to me, that game more than anything else, it was a stress test in the trenches. I wanted to see how Indiana's offensive line, which has played very well this year, would stack up against one of the better defensive fronts in the country. And the answer is apparently quite well. And I think that what you have to be most excited about if you're an Indiana fan coming off of that game is that I think that this is an early indication that Indiana has the potential to match up with really great teams up front. You know, you go through the first 6 games of the year, and there really isn't a unit that you expect would challenge you that much. I mean, Northwestern's pretty good defensively, but certainly nothing to the level of the Nebraskas of the world. And now I think when you look into, Michigan down the road, or even, to an extent, Ohio State, I think the fact that they were able to control the game the way that they did, it gives me a lot of optimism that, certainly they're going to be underdogs when they go and play Ohio State, but it's not going to be too big of a challenge for them.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing that I wanted to see as well. How did they hold up front and even on defense as well? What was the most impressive part of that win over Nebraska on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the way that they really got after Dylan Raiola, too, on the other side. I think forced him into 3 interceptions, if I remember right. Like, this was a total team dominant performance. And the other piece that I have to mention is that they were still able to do some really good things offensively when Curtis Rourke went out of the game. This isn't, just one player that they're relying on. Taven Jackson was able to come in and certainly wasn't playing at the level of Curtis Rourke, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the country so far, but I think gave you plenty to be able to win. So this is a complete team. They have the ability to beat you in any which way. And again, to create a roster like that and create a team like that on such short notice in Curt Cignetti's first season, it's frankly kind of unbelievable.
It really is. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, talking a little college football. Curt Cignetti's his approval rating right now was like just under like puppies. I feel like everybody loves this guy. Did you I don't know how much you watched him at James Madison last year, but is this what you expected? Because I don't think anybody expected for him to show up and be 7-0. But did you expect him to find success at IU?
I thought that maybe he could eventually, but it definitely wasn't something that I thought was turnkey by any means. I mean, look, I don't think that this roster was bad last year, but it certainly wasn't one of the better ones in the Big Ten. And I think that when I look at Curt Cignetti too, I thought maybe this is a multi-year build in order to try to get to the point of, having a roster that's built in his image, having a team culture that's built in his image. I think it's the culture piece that's probably the most impressive to this point. Just because, again, that's not something that happens overnight. When you bring in that many transfers, it's unbelievable to get everybody on the same page that quickly.
Yeah, it really is. And this is the thing about the transfer portal. I know that people love to kind of complain about it, but I think Indiana fans really like it right now because this is the positive side of it. And when you look at the roster, it's a lot of group of 5 transfers. Are you surprised that just with all these guys that transferred up from JMU, obviously Curtis Rourke is from Ohio, a Maction legend on Tuesday nights. Are you surprised at how kind of all these group of 5 guys are able to show up and win these games?
Well, I think that it's a testament to the evaluation of this staff. Look, I think with the JMU kids, right, like you have some understanding of your own guys. You have some understanding of your own roster. And Curt Cignetti, you know, he kind of has this great background where, of course, for part of his life, he was a receivers coach and recruiting coordinator at Alabama under Nick Saban. But then also, you know, again, he was identifying kids at the Division II level, at the FCS level, and trying to find kids who could transition to his level. So I think he kind of has this dual approach to it, which is great. And so he knows what it takes to play at this level. But I think the other thing, too, is that when I look at Curt Cignetti, and I'd make the same claim of many of the sort of like work their way up coaches in college football. I mean, the reality is, like, I think that this is, I think that these guys are really good at just finding guys who are good at football. It's a funny thing to say, but like, I think that that's come at a premium these days. We are so obsessed with traits and with ratings and all this sort of stuff that we don't necessarily look at skill development, and I don't think put enough premium on it, you know, as opposed to some of the more measurable stuff. So I think that Curt Cignetti's done a tremendous job of getting them to that point. And again, I think that this is a testament to having a vision for what you want and also the level of development that they're able to do to make it all come together.
Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports talking college football. Indiana's 7-0 starts. People are excited. But if they lose on Saturday, IU fans will very quickly be like, when is basketball season starting? So they got to keep it going. They're playing Washington, who they have a new head coach, obviously a new quarterback in Will Rogers, who transferred up from Mississippi State. I haven't seen a ton of Washington this year. I watched them beat what I would say is not very good Michigan team earlier in the year. What are kind of your thoughts on Washington what is Indiana going to have to deal with on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, this was a roster that really, really turned over this offseason, of course, off of a national championship run. You know, the headliners are what they are. You know, Rome Odunze, Michael Penix Jr., they're in the NFL now. And there really was a concerted effort. Frankly, I mean, I think that Jed Fish tried to do a lot of what Curt Cignetti did, where he tried to come in and say, look, you know, we want to bring a lot of players from our previous stop at Arizona, ultimately opted to stay behind. So this is also that I think itself out just a little bit. I think that Indiana, frankly, is they're more veteran at this point as well, and I do ultimately think that Indiana is the better and more complete team heading into this game.
That's kind of how I feel as well. I don't know how much you are or how interested you are in gambling, but when I saw that Indiana was still favored by 6.5, even though Curtis Rourke isn't going to play on Saturday, that kind of told me everything that you just said about Indiana being better. But with that being said, when you don't have your 6-year quarterback playing for you, like that obviously has an impact. How do you think that's going to impact Indiana on Saturday?
Well, and I think the other pieces too is like obviously Taven Jackson played well off the bench, but we've seen multiple games and multiple teams this year that played well with their backup situation in a backup situation. But, you know, when they were thrust into the starting lineup, it's a different kind of challenge. So I think that a lot is going to be put on this defense. I think a lot is going to be put on this running game. They've been very efficient so far this year behind Justice Elson and Tyson Lawton. So I do think that this is ultimately going to be a game where you need to see the full team come through. Now, I think that Taven Jackson also proved in his limited appearances that he's going to be able to do some things offensively as well. Certainly, you're not playing with a hand behind your back or anything like that. But I do think that it does tighten this game just a little bit, and everybody else needs to step up.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. You know, like you said, we saw Jackson come in and play well against Nebraska, but at that point, the game was kind of already in hand. It'll be different, kind of seeing how he manages the entire game. But I'm excited to see him. He's I believe a 4-star guy coming out of high school. So obviously, like, he's talented. I've got all the faith in the world in Cignetti to kind of help him play well. It seems like the system he runs is pretty quarterback friendly, but then again, it's coming from a guy in me who doesn't know much about how offensive systems work. So anyway, Indiana plays Ohio State a month from today. I know you talked about it a little bit at the start of this, but from what you've seen so far from Indiana, how do you feel like they stack up against Ohio State, who they lost to Oregon, but this is still one of the best teams in the country? How do you think IU stacks up?
Well, and look, if you ask me today, I think that I still think they are the best team in the country, especially when they're able to put it all together. So it's going to be a tremendous challenge, frankly, heading into that one. Again, I feel better about Indiana's ability to hang in the trenches. And I think one thing that helps is that Ohio State's pass rush hasn't been as consistent maybe as we expected. So I do think that there are creases to be found. The challenge, I think, is going to be more the other direction. How is Indiana able to match up with a really, really physical run game and also with a couple of receivers on the outside who are going to be playing on Sundays for a very long time? Again, there isn't a team at this point from an offensive perspective that's truly challenged Indiana, and Ohio State will clearly be that team. Now, we'll learn some stuff against Washington this upcoming week in terms of how Indiana matches up with at least an above-average offense. But, look, Ohio State is Ohio State. It's one of the best teams in the country. I think that certainly they'd be favored by a good amount in this game. But look, after what I've seen the past 7 weeks from Indiana, I don't think they're going to back down from anybody, and I know they're going to have a great game plan.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports talking college football. Going back to what happened on Saturday, Georgia handled Texas. I figured that the game would be close. I thought Georgia had a pretty good chance to win. I thought Texas was a little overrated. I think there was this consensus opinion that Texas was the best team. I wasn't so sure. Georgia obviously goes into Austin, wins. There were water bottles on the field. It was crazy. Were you surprised at how well Georgia played against Texas?
Well, I think that the thing that legitimately surprised me and that I didn't expect was I didn't expect Georgia's defensive line to get so much pass rush pressure. This isn't a team and a defense that usually is trying to even do that so much, right? Usually when you look at Georgia, they're a team that's trying to completely eliminate the run and make the reads on the back end very difficult for quarterbacks. But Georgia in this game was just let's make Quinn Ewers' life hell. Let's make Arch Manning's life hell. And Texas has 2 tackles that are projected to be first-round NFL draft picks, and Kelvin Banks at left tackle is supposed to be the first guy off the board. Well, he certainly didn't look like that kind of player going against Michael Williams and Jalen Walker on that Georgia defensive front last week. So that was the one piece that truly surprised me. I thought that Texas certainly was going to give up a few pressures and sacks, but I thought that they'd be able to hold their own. This offensive line is nowhere near as good as I think we thought it was. The other direction, I feel like it kind of went how I expected, right? I mean, if you told me heading into the game that Carson Beck was going to have 175 yards and 3 interceptions, I would have liked Texas's chances in that game. I thought the defense for Texas played incredibly well. But look, I mean, if Georgia is that much better in the trenches from a defensive to offensive line perspective than Texas, then one, I don't think that you can take Texas all that seriously as a national title contender. And two, Georgia once again becomes one of the scarier teams in the country. There are going to be teams, I think, that can take advantage of, a Georgia offense has been inconsistent, but it wasn't Texas on Saturday.
No, it was not. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports talking college football. You can read everything he writes over at cbssports.com. 2 more questions for you, and I will let you go. Alabama is an interesting case study this year. I think they're suffering a bit from Nick Saban's success, whereas you just expect for Alabama to beat everyone, and DeBoer has shown up, and he lost to Vanderbilt. He lost to Tennessee as well. Maybe Alabama just shouldn't play any more games in that state. I don't know. But winning games in the SEC is hard. How good is Alabama, and at what point do Alabama fans have a right to panic about everything that's going on down there in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, I mean, they're still a very good team. I think that they, you look at all of the games that they played, and the 2 games that they lost, they were 4th quarter games where Alabama had a chance to win at the end, and they just couldn't get it done. So, this is not a bad team by any means, but I think what's a little surprising is, with Kalen DeBoer, I mean, he's been a master in these close games. when you look back at his time at Washington and at Fresno State before. So I do think that this team still has a chance to be pretty good and has a chance to, maybe finish things out. But losing this game to Tennessee, I think, is a huge deal when you start looking forward to their college football playoff games. They still have to play LSU. They still obviously have other losable games on the schedule. And I just think that there's a level of trust that you lose with the way that they've struggled so far in close games. And the other piece, too, is that it's just been something different every single week. It would be one thing if it was like, okay, against Georgia, for example, in the second half, against Vanderbilt, you're like, well, I think that Alabama safeties are really struggling outside of Malachi Moore. Like, they just are young and they're maybe not ready for this. But the next week, it was the offense against Tennessee that really had some problems. And they kind of tried to spam Ryan Williams and weren't able to generate a whole lot outside of that. So I think that's probably the most concerning thing. It is just this the fact that the issues keep kind of showing up in different places. And to me, that comes down to coaching and not necessarily personnel. So I do think that, look, I mean, obviously this is one of the most talented rosters from a recruiting perspective in the history of college football. So they're not going to earn that much leeway, and frankly, they shouldn't. But, I do think that you also look back at a lot of first-year coaches across the sport, and the first year can be a little bit of an adjustment period. It can be kind of hard. I'm not certainly out on Kalen DeBoer at this point, but he's going to need to figure some of these things out and kind of come up with a really a clear direction heading into year two.
So you mentioned earlier that you thought that Ohio State was the best team in the country. And if there's any year to have this debate, it's this one, because like you can make a case for Georgia. I know that Texas lost on Saturday. You can make a case for them. Obviously, Ohio State, obviously Oregon. What do you think it is about Ohio State that kind of separates them from everyone else?
Well, I think that they just have more answers than any other team. I mean, they can win games with their passing. They can win games with their rushing. They can win games with their defensive front. They can win games with their secondary. Like, you look up and down that roster, probably the biggest question mark coming into the year was the offensive line. But it's been really good to this point. Now, they'll have to move forward without Josh Simmons at left tackle, who has been a really good player for them. So we'll see how that impacts things. But I just think that when this team plays its best game, I don't know that there's a team.
Shehan, you there? Hello?
Yep, you got me?
Yeah, yep. Gotcha.
Hello?
You dropped there for a second. All good.
Okay. Well, you can have the most perfect game plan in the world. You can have the most perfect roster in the world. I mean, sometimes you have to go out and win these close games. And the reality is Ryan Day is 2-7 in top 5 games. That's an inhibitor. It just is. But I do think that that when this team is rolling, I mean, no team has a JT Tuimoloau out on defense and a Jeremiah Smith on offense. No team has, a Caleb Downs in the secondary and a Quinshon Judkins at running back. They can win any way, and I think that eventually they're just going to do that.
Okay, fair enough. That loss in Oregon, I didn't think was a super big deal. I actually kind of feel better about Ohio State after seeing Will Howard play really well. I know we're all going to focus on the last play where he slid with 0 seconds left on the clock, but outside of that, I actually thought that he played really well. Shehan, thanks for your time, man. You were great as always.
Thank you so much for having me.
See ya. That is the great Shehan Jeyarajah. You can follow him on Twitter at Shehan Jeyarajah, spelled she, Shehan, and then Jeyarajah spelled how it sounds. He does a great job writing stuff over at CBSSports.com. Does a great job covering college football, so make sure you go check all of his stuff out. Thanks to him again for lending us his time. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, the NBA season's underway. We had our first 2 games last night. Before the NFL season started, I gave some pretty big takes. I'm going to do the same thing with the NBA. We'll obviously track them as the year goes on. So when we come back here in 4 minutes, I'm going to give you my big NBA takes for the upcoming season.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's on Twitter, maybe you're watching on YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket over there. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're listening via the Indy Sports Ticket app, where you can listen to not only my show from 10 to noon, but you can also listen to the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3, or maybe you're just listening via 1430 AM. No matter how you're listening, I greatly appreciate it. The NBA season started last night. I know that, I got to be honest, I don't really care. Before the NFL season, I gave some big predictions because that's just what we do here on the real Jonathan Smith Show. I want to give you big swings, big predictions. We're going to track them. I'm not going to say them and then just have them disappear. If I get it wrong, then, we'll talk about it on Mondays when we do true takes and mistakes. And if I get it right, we'll talk about it on true takes and mistakes on Mondays. We're going to track this stuff like we do. So let's start. Look, if your NBA champion is anyone other than Boston, I think you're nuts. Okay, the Celtics are going to beat the Thunder. They're going to be repeat champions, something we haven't seen in the NBA for a long time now. I'm not picking against Boston. This Thunder team that I think is going to come out of the West, young, loaded with talent, but Boston's returning 13 guys that were on their NBA Finals team from last year, so I like them with the experience to beat a really good and young Oklahoma City Thunder team. MVP, Luka Doncic. He's due for one. It's honestly surprising that he hasn't won one yet. Okay? Like, if he stays healthy, he'll win the MVP. Part of that will be because he's the second best basketball player in the world behind Nikola Jokic. The other reason for it will be because he took the Mavericks to the finals last year. All the voters, they're going to look around and be like, oh, crap, this guy doesn't have one yet. And then they're going to give it to him because that's just the way that the MVP award in the NBA works. Defensive Player of the Year, Victor Wembanyama. He should have won it last year. No way around it. He is hands down the best defender on the planet. It's not close. If he has a healthy career, he will be the best defender ever by the time it's all said and done, because he's 7'4" with an incredible wingspan, and he also just moves incredibly well. Okay, so if he stays healthy, he's going to win the Defensive Player of the Year. And honestly, from this year on, if every year he stays healthy, he should win Defensive Player of the Year. Like, it is not close in terms of who the best defender in the NBA is. It is second-year player out of France, Victor Wembanyama. Rookie of the Year, Reed Shepherd. Reed Shepherd's going to win Rookie of the Year. Freaking love this kid. Love this kid. Athletic, defends, can shoot the crap out of the basketball, can play on the ball, he can play off the ball. At a minimum, Reed Shepherd's going to be a good NBA player, like starting point guard on a lot of good basketball teams. That's the floor for him. But he could also be great. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if he was like a multiple-time All-Star, maybe made a couple All-NBA teams as well. Reed Shepherd, he's going to win Rookie of the Year. Sorry, Zach Edey. I just don't think that you're going to get the touches necessary in Memphis to make that happen and to win Rookie of the Year. Moving on to my Pacers predictions. I have a couple here. The Pacers are going to have not one, not two, but three All-Stars. Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam are both going to be All-Stars. Okay, there's a lot of love for the Pacers. Okay, coming off of the Eastern Conference Finals run, people are going to pay more attention to them. Tyrese Halliburton was an All-Star last year. He played on the Olympic team. People know who he is. People know what he's good at. And let's be honest, Tyrese Halliburton needs to be in the All-Star game. Like, it's important to have passing guards in the All-Star game. That way we can see guys like Anthony Edwards do insane things on fast breaks. Okay, so Tyrese Halliburton, he'll be an All-Star. Pascal Siakam in the system is poised and ready to be an All-Star. He's going to get a lot of touches. He's going to score a lot of points. So I like the chances of Siakam being an All-Star. And then the third guy, either Andrew Nembhard or Benedict Mathurin or Miles Turner will be an All-Star. One of those three guys will be the third one. I think this Pacers team is going to win a lot of games. They're on national TV 14 times this year, which is way more than I believe the 2 games that they got on national TV last year. So people are going to see more of Andrew Nembhard coming off of, what can only be described as a great performance in the playoffs last year. People are going to see more of Benedict Mathurin. They'll see the size and the length and the scoring ability. They're going to see Miles Turner chucking threes up from deep and knocking them down. Okay, they're going to see him block shots, right? That's the guy who's led the league in blocks multiple times. Really like the Pacers' chances of having not 1, not 2, but 3 All-Stars this season. Final Pacers take on the year. The Pacers and Magic will both be a top 4 seed, especially the Pacers. I like the Pacers as a top 4 seed and the Magic as well. Between the Bucks being old, because the Bucks are really old, like Damian Lillard's 36, small guards kind of run out of gas a little bit more, a little more quickly than bigger guys do. Giannis is 30. He's in year 12. Bobby Portis, who was the young guy last year, he's going into year 10. Brooke Lopez is like 37. Like, it's just a really old team, and old teams just don't do well in the regular season. They pace themselves a little bit more. There's a little bit more load management. Doc Rivers, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, not the best coach in the world. Okay, so I don't think the Bucks will be a top 4 seed, even though I think that's kind of the expectation for them. The 76ers won't be a top 4 seed. Joel Embiid and Paul George, they're doing the whole load management thing. Those guys aren't even playing to start the season. Like, I mean, it's incredible, the fact that these guys just don't have to play basketball. But anyway, so because of that, because the 76ers are going to miss their 2 best players pretty frequently, I don't expect for them to be a top 4 seed. And then the Knicks, I don't know if you watched the Knicks play last night, but if you know me, if you've listened to my show, then you know that I love the NBA. Watch it all the time. Know a lot of the players, all that kind of stuff. The Knicks were running guys out on the floor last night that I didn't know who they were. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, they have 6, maybe 7 guys, if you count Campaign, who's not very good at basketball. Like, after that, I'm good. Like, I didn't know any of those guys. They lack depth. That's going to hurt them in the regular season. So, while I do expect for the Knicks to be a top 4 seed, I do think that there's a scenario where a guy gets hurt and they just don't have the depth to make up for that. So 2 of those 3 teams are going to suffer in the regular season. If I had to take bets on who they were, I'd do the Bucks and the 76ers, because the Knicks do have a lot of top-end talent. So anyway, 2 of those teams that are expected to be top 4 seeds won't be. That leaves the door open for 2 young and promising teams, one being the Pacers. Their over-under is set at 47.5. They won 47 last year. This is an easy over. Siakam for the whole year. Halliburton hopefully stays healthy. Benedict Mathurin hopefully stays healthy. A lot of these guys are a year older. They're a little bit better. So I expect this team to win at least 50 games this year, maybe closer to 55. We'll see. They didn't beat bad teams last year. Okay, they have an opportunity to do that tonight, right? Beat the bad teams this year, and this team should be fine, and they should easily be a top 4 seed. The Orlando Magic, that's a really good team. Great defensively, tall, long, athletic. Paulo Banchero is a beast. Okay, Franz Wagner played really well at the Olympics. He's coming back. If that jump shots develops, he's going to be good. Jalen Suggs, they just extended him. Absolute dog. Love watching him play. Pacers and the Magic will both be top 4 seeds this season. Looking at the bottom of the league, the Wizards are going to have the worst record in the NBA. They won't win 20 games. That's how bad this Wizards team is. And then last take for you here before, we get to break. When we come back on the other side of the break, we're going to get into Colts, Texans, and all those things. Talk about the AFC South, because there's just a lot to cover with this division. The Hornets are going to make the playing game this year. Okay. I like their young talent. Brandon Miller's good. Nick Smith Jr., he can really score. Don't like LaMelo, but he's a willing passer, so hopefully he'll stay out of the way of those two guys. Also like the French kid that they took with the sixth pick. I'm going to butcher his name here. Tidjane Saloon. I hope that's how you say it. That's probably not. That didn't sound French at all. He's incredibly athletic, plays incredibly hard, very raw. But look, man, like in the regular season during the NBA, if you just play hard, you're going to make an impact. Because a lot of guys out there, they're on, some sort of cruise control until there's about, 4 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter in a close game. The real reason, though, why I expect for the Hornets to be better is that Michael Jordan he's out of the way. He's no longer making decisions for that franchise. Great player, terrible owner, didn't draft well or anything like that. So get Michael Jordan out of the way. Because of that, the Hornets are going to be much, much better. Pacers play tonight. Tip is at 7 o'clock. They're on the road against the Detroit Pistons. Can't wait to watch. I can't wait to watch. Basketball is back. We got college hoops less than 2 weeks away. It's like we're almost to the best time of the year where we've got the NFL, college basketball, the NBA, hockey, and the World Series all going on at the same time. My wife is dreading that, but she'll be okay. Can't wait for all of it. When we come back here in 5 minutes, the AFC South, the Colts, Texans, just so much to get to when we come back here in about 4.5 minutes. Celebrate the spooky season with Zero Res and get 3 rooms of carpet clean starting at just $119 and take $75 off your air duct cleaning. Book online at ZeroResIndy.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a nice start to your week. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's on Twitter. Follow me there at __ Jonathan Smith. Follow the station at Ticket 1430. Okay, you can watch the show over there. Maybe you're watching on YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. Head over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, watch the live stream there, comment in the chat, be part of the conversation of whatever we're talking about here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Let's talk about the AFC South. Okay, the AFC South continues to solidify itself as the worst division in the NFL. The Tennessee Titans, awful. So bad. Atrocious. Okay, maybe it doesn't matter who plays quarterback for them, right? We saw Mason Rudolph play against, the Miami Dolphins. They scored 31 points. It's like, oh, maybe they throw Rudolph in there and they're a little bit better. No, they played the Bills on Sunday and got trounced. That game wasn't even close. The offense continued to look terrible. Okay, so swapping in and out quarterbacks won't fix anything for that Titans team. They are bad. No way around it. They are the worst team in the division. Simple as that. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they were able to beat a bad Patriots team on Sunday in London. Those London games are weird. Whenever the Jags play back-to-back games in London and they stay, that's like an automatic, gotta bet the Jags, right? They're there. Bodies are used to the time zone thing. So not surprised at all that they beat a bad Patriots team on Sunday, crushed them. So Doug Peterson, he's holding on to his job for just a little bit longer. That is about to change, though. That is, because the Jags, next, they have to play the Packers, who are really good. The Eagles, who are really good. Or the Eagles, who are 4-2. I don't know if they're really good. I don't trust Sirianni. He's on the verge of losing his job as well. I'm just kind of waiting on the wheels to fall off the wagon in Philadelphia, like a lot of other people are. Then the Jaguars have to play the Vikings. That's a loss. And then they have to play the Lions. Like, that's just a brutal 4-game stretch. My bet is that Doug Peterson gets fired somewhere during this 4-game stretch. Me taking the Jags to win the AFC South, hands down, the worst take I've had, or worst prediction I've had on this show since I started here in January. So yeah, not a good pick there by me. Next, the Houston Texans. Even though they lost on Sunday to a, once again, really good Packers team, they still appear to be the best team in the division. Okay? Like, even though C.J. Stroud was terrible on Sunday, right? 10 of 21, only 84 yards. He's still the best quarterback in the NFL. Or, excuse me, he's still the best quarterback in this division, not in the NFL. That would be Patrick Mahomes, right? So, when it comes to the Texans, they're also battling a lot of injuries. Don't overreact to that loss against the Packers. This team still appears to be the best in the division. For reference, on these injuries, they have 6 starters, the Houston Texans do, on IR. 4 of them play defense. In addition to that, against the Packers, they had 5 players out, not on IR. 4 of them play defense. They were missing 8 defensive starters against the Packers. That is problematic for any team, no matter how deep you are. Like, that's problematic. So the Houston Texans, like, they're incredibly banged up on defense right now, and hopefully that remains the case against the Colts, because the Colts need all the help they can get beating this Houston team that beat them in Week 1 here in Indianapolis. Colts going on the road this Sunday to play against what is, once again, a good Houston Texans team. And then, of course, you've got us, the Indianapolis Colts, a team that's 4-3. Currently sits in, if the playoffs started today, the Colts would be the 6th seed, which is nuts, right? Because, yes, they're 4-3, but it's an ugly 4-3. If they win on Sunday, they'll be 5-3, and they'll be tied atop the division with the Houston Texans, which just wouldn't feel real. Like sitting back and like going to ESPN.com and looking at the standings and seeing that would just be, it'd be incredibly weird because I don't think anybody really expected for the Colts to have this opportunity after the way that they started 0-2, right? And just for them to have an opportunity at the halfway point in the season to, be tied atop the division, like that's surprising. And that's obviously a good thing. But I think we're all just kind of waiting on the other shoe to drop because this defense can't stop the run. Anthony Richardson has had more downs than ups this year. But, I mean, as of right now, the Colts have a legitimate playoff shot, which is a great thing, right? But they've got this tough stretch coming up on Sunday. They've got to find a way to beat a couple of teams that are better than they are, right? Really, like there's just no other way to say it. Like when you look at these next games coming up, the only team where I'm like, yeah, the Colts feel like they're better than them is the New York Jets, who, if they can figure out the offense with Devontae Adams, that could change rather quickly. So getting healthier should help the Colts kind of win some of these games that it doesn't really seem like they're supposed to. And they are slowly getting healthier. Shane Steichen, he talked to the media on Tuesday, and he opened with an injury update on a couple of important players for the Colts.
I'll start off. Carlis, he's going to miss some time. I won't put a timetable on it, but he'll miss some time. Optimistic on Buck returning this week. And then JT, we'll see how the week goes, but very optimistic on JT as well for the week.
Optimistic. Colts have their first practice of the week. Hopefully we see both of them pop up and practice. Hopefully it's at a minimum, it's some sort of like limited capacity. We'll kind of see how those two guys, kind of develop throughout the week. The Colts need them. They need both of them. Okay, Jonathan Taylor coming back would be huge for this Colts team. Okay, he got off to a great start this year. He was playing like one of the best running backs in the NFL before he got hurt, right? He's got, the high ankle sprain or whatever. The Colts need him on Sunday if they want to beat Houston. His career against Houston has been really good. In 7 games, he's rushed for almost 1,000 yards. Like he's found a lot of success against Houston. Okay, and if the Texans are as banged up as they were last week against the Packers, then, Jonathan Taylor's performance should only be better, right? So if he's able to play, I'm going to feel, and I'm assuming you're also going to feel, a lot better about the Colts' chances to go on the road to Houston and win that game. And while the Colts would obviously benefit from Jonathan Taylor returning, they have been fine on the ground without him. Okay, if Anthony Richardson plays, then they'll continue to be able to run the ball. Like the Colts ran the ball well last game against Miami. Anthony Richardson had 14 carries for 56 yards. I understand that that's not the most comforting thing in the world. I know that some people out there just want to wrap Anthony Richardson in bubble wrap and not let him run, but that's just kind of part of what he does. And I'm a little bit more comforted after seeing Richardson play last game, seeing him slide multiple times, seeing him go down early. Like that shows that he's learning, shows that he's moving in the right direction and that he's trying to stay on the field. If that continues, then run Anthony Richardson 14 times if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play. That's fine. I really like Tyler Goodson. Dude's shown some real explosiveness. The drive where they fed Trey Sermon late against Miami, like he looked really good. He was dealing with a shoulder injury last game. I'm assuming that's part of why he only had 8 carries. But if he's healthier this week, then the Colts run game will be fine without Jonathan Taylor. Obviously, they're much better with him than they are without him. And I'm saying all that to set up this take of, I think that the Colts need to force Buckner back more than they need Jonathan Taylor. Okay, like Jonathan Taylor, really good player. Love watching him play. Okay, like really good, right? Like he elevates the Colts run game. He's a real asset. Okay, as I said, he's playing like one of the best he was playing like one of the best running backs in the NFL before he got hurt. But he's not a necessity. The Colts don't need him. Okay, he's icing, right? Like you can enjoy a cake with no icing. Okay, I know some people who actually prefer to do it that way, which is cool. But if you're just hanging out, sitting down on your couch, eating a tub of icing, then like we probably wouldn't be friends because that's really weird. Okay, the Colts don't need Jonathan Taylor, but he enhances the offense. He takes the run game to another level. Whereas this Colts defense needs DeForest Buckner. Okay, I know that they've done a good job these past couple games against the Titans and the Dolphins. They haven't given up, an overwhelming amount of points, but they've given up a ton of rushing yards, and it's the Titans and the Dolphins. Okay, it's more importantly, it's Tyler Huntley or Tim Boyle and the Dolphins, or it was Will Levis and the Titans. Like holding those teams to like 10 points or 17 points, I think is what the Titans scored. Like that's not impressive to me. It's not. Okay. And DeForest Buckner is needed on this defensive line. Because even though the Colts defense was able to keep the Titans and the Dolphins in check, I don't think anyone has any sort of peace about this Colts defense, especially the run defense. Like DeForest Buckner had 81 tackles last year. That's a lot for a defensive tackle. Okay, that speaks to DeForest Buckner's ability to play the run. He's also a guy who's, logged 8 sacks these past few years. That's a good number from a defensive tackle. I think watching Aaron Donald and Chris Jones, in Los Angeles and Kansas City these past couple of years has really warped the mindset of what defensive tackles are supposed to be in terms of a pass rush. Like most defensive tackles don't log double-digit sacks. Like that's just that's not normal, right? Like that's why Aaron Donald's one of the best defenders ever because he consistently did that. So DeForest Buckner, like this is one of the better players not only on the Colts defensive line, but this is one of the better players on the Colts defense. Period. Okay, he gives them more depth. He gives them more production. Okay, he's a 2-time All-Pro selection. Look, I don't care about Pro Bowls. Okay, the Pro Bowl is selected by elementary school kids and people who don't know what they're talking about. All-Pro selections are selected by the writers, the people who watch everything. Like those are the best players in the NFL. DeForest Buckner is a really good player. As I said, one of the best players on this Colts defense. Okay, and he's capable of going to that All-Pro level from time to time. He's a bit older now, so he's 30. I don't expect him to play like 25-year-old DeForest Buckner. But either way, the Colts need him way more than Jonathan Taylor. They need the depth, and they need the talent on defense. And DeForest Buckner provides both of those things immediately. Whereas for the Colts offense, Jonathan Taylor makes it better, no doubt, but he's not needed in the same way that DeForest Buckner is. The Colts need to get after the quarterback against these better offenses, and they need to figure out a way to stop the run, especially the stop the run thing. If Mixon runs for 160 yards again on Sunday, the Colts aren't winning. That's not going to happen. And DeForest Buckner is a guy who can come in and he can help them on both sides, or he can help them do both of these things. Okay, he can rush the passer from the middle. And more importantly, he can help them stop the run. He gives them depth and he gives them talent, which is what they need. Like they've only been rotating 3 guys at defensive tackle, which is a bit of an issue, right? Like that's just not enough dudes. Okay, so Buckner, not only the Colts' best defensive tackle, but he adds depth that this Colts defensive line needs with all these other injuries that they are dealing with. They need him, man. They really do. He's, one of the better players on this Colts defense. And Colts versus Texans, part 2 of the 2024 season is really important. Like, it's not only about avoiding being 4-4, it's also about, like, being tied atop the division. And, I would feel much better about the Colts defense and their chances against this Texans offense with DeForest Buckner out there as opposed to him not being out there. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to start looking ahead a little bit, start talking about the Colts and the Texans. What's going to be different? What's going to be the same compared to that week 1 loss I've got thoughts on that when we come back here in 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, it's greatly appreciated. Head over to YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. Watch the live stream there. Join the chat. Be part of the conversation. Colts, Texans, part 2. Coming our way here very shortly, right? Sunday is going to be here before we know it. And Jim Bob Cooter, Colts offensive coordinator, took some time with the media yesterday to answer some questions, and he was asked about the upcoming game against Houston, what's going to be different, how is game 2 different from game 1, those types of things. And here's what Colts offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter had to say.
Yeah, a little bit of a battle back and forth. Those guys had it was the first week of the season, and there were some schematic tweaks that they had made over the offseason that we were able to sort of see that this is what they're going to be in the 2024 season, or see that this is what they're going to emphasize in the 2024 season. That's always a fun part of week 1. Those guys, sort of making some adjustments and you adjusting right back. So it was week 1. The energy was good. The excitement was good. We always want to play a little bit better, which could give our guys a little bit better shot to go get that win. But it was a good ball game. It was a competitive ball game. It's a good challenge. The opponent is a good challenge. It's one our guys are excited for again. We know how much it means, and we know that we got to put in a really good week's work to go make the most out of it. But it was a good week 1 tape to go back and study. There's been quite a few tapes since then. We've played some games. They've played some games. I'm sure the tendencies will ebb and flow along with those, but ultimately we'll show up down there in Houston and go compete like crazy against a good opponent. It's going to be fun.
Colts offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter right there talking about this upcoming game against Houston, how things have changed since the last time that they played them. And they lost 29-27, scored a bunch of points. The defense couldn't get stops. That was the issue in week 1. Usually when you score 27 points in the NFL, that should be enough to win. But hey, shout out Gus Bradley for that not being the case. And I remember that, the Colts lost that game. People went crazy, but we've reverted back to the norm now that the Colts are 4-3 and they're 4-1 in their last 5 games. Week 1 has got to be the hardest game to prepare for in the NFL. I'm going to ask Dan about that later, because things are just different, right? Like you walk into week 1 and Jim Bob, he talks about a little bit there where you just you don't know what tweaks the other team is going to make. The players can be different. And in the NFL, they oftentimes are, right? And it's also the healthiest that your opponent is going to be. It's also the healthiest that your team is going to be. And there's just a lot of unknowns when you're getting ready for that week 1 game, right? You're making educated guesses on what the other team is going to do and it's all based off of what happened last year, because teams aren't showing you what they're going to do during, the preseason. No one's giving away anything, while that's going on. So you're making educated guesses on both sides of the ball based off of what the team did the previous year. But ultimately, no one knows what anyone is going to run. And that is obviously not the case this week for either team. Texans have played 7 games. They're 5-2. The Colts have played 7 games. They're 4-3. They've played each other once before. That weighs into this game as well. I expect for the Colts to come out very well prepared. Hopefully they're healthier. I'm waiting on that injury report. I want to see if Jonathan Taylor practices today. I want to see if DeForest Buckner practices today. These are important things, right? Because oftentimes, they say in the NFL that the best team doesn't usually win. It's just the healthiest team, right? Because health really matters. If the Texans are down a whole bunch of starters on defense once again, then I really like the Colts' chances to go down into Houston and win this game. They went down in there last year and they blew Houston out. The Colts are capable of winning this game. Okay, and I know that there's concerns about Anthony Richardson. Well, how's he going to play? We don't know, right? That's one of the intriguing things about the Indianapolis Colts this year is we walk into every single game and there's this question of, is Anthony Richardson going to be good? Is he going to be bad? Is there going to be more good than bad? Is there going to be more bad than good? He keeps us on our toes. And while as fans, that's frustrating, as spectators, I got to be honest, it's really fun. It's so much more enjoyable watching these Colts games or just thinking about these Colts games with Anthony Richardson as the starting quarterback as opposed to Gardner Minshew or Joe Flacco. Okay, two guys that are going to get this Colts team to like 9-8 and a first-round playoff exit. Okay, so big game coming up. Going to be interesting to see how the Colts adjust to that week 1 loss, especially on defense. Right? Like I think we all kind of know what to expect from the offense. Some big plays here and there. I'm sure Houston's going to do everything they can to not give up as many big plays as they did against the Colts in that week 1 game. But defensively for the Colts, what are they going to do to stop the run? Like that is the biggest thing for me. You know, we're going to do the title of the game tomorrow where we kind of lay out the theme, but when it comes to the Colts and this defense, like what are they going to do to keep Joe Mixon from running for 160 yards again? Okay, thankfully, they don't have to worry about Nico Collins. He's still going to be out. He's still on IR with that hamstring, right? A guy who's just demolished the Colts really ever since he's shown up in the NFL. Like they don't have to worry about him. They have to worry about Stephon Diggs, and they have to worry about Tank Dell, two very capable and good receivers. But Samuel Momack's been playing really well this year. Kenny Moore is healthy again. Jalen Johnson has been he's been good right throughout the season. So, like, I've got a little bit more faith in this Colts secondary. Definitely more faith now than I did at the start of the year. Nick Cross playing well. Julian Blackmon was a bit better against Miami. So I've got faith in the back end of this defense, in part because like they've shown that they're capable of staying in some games, but also no Nico Collins is a big deal for Houston. The question is the front seven, right? Banged up, hurt. EJ Speed didn't play last week. That wasn't the worst thing in the world. Hopefully we see more Grant Stewart. Honestly, if Grant Stewart just plays a bunch, then I've got all the faith in the world in the Colts to stop the Texans and their ability to run the ball, because Stewart's just a maniac when he's playing downhill. It's great to watch, but in all seriousness, like that is the thing. What adjustments do Gus Bradley and this Colts defense make to figure out how to get stops and how to get off the field on third down and how to keep the Texans out of, 2nd and 5 and then 3rd and 2? Okay, how do they stop the run? That is the most important thing for the Colts in this game. They'll go back, they'll watch the tape from week 1, they'll see, they'll watch the rest of Houston's games and they'll make their adjustments from there. But very interested to see what they do to hopefully slow down what is a really good Texans offense. A team that can really run the ball, especially when Joe Mixon is playing. Houston Texans, they're the 8th best team in the NFL right now. Hopefully they drop after this week. A team that is the best team in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, they got better, and all it costed them was a 5th-round pick. The Tennessee Titans traded DeAndre Hopkins, who was a 1,000-yard receiver last year, traded him to the Chiefs for a 5th-round pick. Yeah, this season just feels over. I'm talking about, the Colts and how they can make the playoffs and all these things. And with where the Colts are at, like that's the goal, right? Like make the playoffs, win the division, and like there's hope that the Colts can do that because they're 4-3 right now and have a hold on the first wild card spot or the second wild card spot for the playoffs right now, right? But if you're like the Bills or if you're the Ravens, right, and you're hanging out, you wake up this morning, you drink a nice, good, warm cup of coffee, you put in that French vanilla creamer because that's the best creamer out there. I won't take any arguments against it. And you're just enjoying your morning. You're sitting out on your back porch, beautiful fall day, and then your phone buzzes. You're like, I wonder if I got a text. And you look down, and you're like, oh, it's an ESPN notification. What does it say? And then you read it, and you're just like, really, Tennessee? You gave the Chiefs DeAndre Hopkins for a 5th-round pick? That's all that it cost. the Chiefs to add a good receiver, not a great one, right? DeAndre Hopkins is definitely past his prime, but he was good last year for the Titans. As I said, I believe he had 76 receptions for over 1,000 yards. That's still a productive year. And now that guy is going to play with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And I don't know when the Chiefs are going to lose again. I don't. I think the idea of an undefeated season has to be in play. They play the Raiders this week. It's a divisional game. Divisional games are always tough, but I think you and I would both agree that the Chiefs are way better than the Raiders, who are, going to start, Aiden O'Connell's on IR, but they're going to start, probably Gardner Minshew, who got benched for Aiden O'Connell. So I like the Chiefs there. Then they play the Buccaneers at home, and the Buccaneers are good, or they were, and then Mike Evans got hurt and Chris Godwin got hurt. So I don't think that the Buccaneers are going to be any good anymore. And then the Chiefs play the Broncos. That should be a win. And then the Chiefs play at the Bills. Could be a loss, but let's be honest, the Chiefs just continue to find ways to beat the Bills. And then they play the Panthers. That's a win. And then they play the Raiders again. That should be a win. And then they play the Chargers, who I'm pretty sure that if I flew out to LA and I was like, hey, Jim Harbaugh, I attack every day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind, and I want to play wide receiver, I think Jim Harbaugh would tell me that I could, because the Chargers don't have any weapons whatsoever. Their best offensive player, not named Justin Herbert, is Ladd McConkey, who's a rookie out of Georgia. Okay? Like, they don't have the weapons and the offensive firepower to compete with Kansas City. And then the Chiefs play the Browns, who are awful. And then they play the Texans. And then they play the Steelers. And then they play the Broncos again. There's just not a team on here that I feel like can beat them. Right? And you say, well, Jonathan, the Bills in 3 weeks, they always beat the Bills. The Bills are incapable of beating Kansas City. And they just brought in this guy in DeAndre Hopkins. And I know that Bills fans and Ravens fans and Lions fans, even, teams with legitimate Super Bowl aspirations, have to be dreading every single second of this. Because it's like, man, we really thought we had a chance. Isaiah Pacheco got hurt, and then Rashee Rice went out for the year. And Patrick Mahomes isn't playing very well right now. Eight interceptions, leads the NFL. He's only thrown six touchdowns on the year. And Travis Kelce kind of feels like he's non-existent and all these things. And it's just like, no, we're just going to go and get DeAndre Hopkins for a 5th-round pick because for some reason teams just like helping the Chiefs win. That's that's where we're at. There should be 31 owners or 31 general managers. They should all get on a Zoom call and just come to this common agreement of, we aren't giving the Chiefs anything. They've won back-to-back Super Bowls. We are not helping them in any way, shape, or form. And then they should all hang up and not trade with the Chiefs anymore. Okay? I grew up in a family where we had this rule. We used to play, Risk. I don't know if you've ever played it, but it's basically you start in different countries and the goal is just to take over the world. Okay? And the game's called Risk. And whenever we play, there's one pretty simple rule. Whoever won last time is not winning again. That is the rule. And that rule is applied to every single game that I play with my family. And I just and as someone who's really competitive, how do teams not do this? Really, Tennessee, you're sending DeAndre Hopkins to the Chiefs for a 5th-round pick. You didn't want to call Buffalo first, right? Or someone or another team that really could have used him. They're like, no, let's send him off to Kansas City for a 5th-round pick. It could be a 4th. We'll see. It's just incredible how it just kind of seems like everything that the Chiefs needs, everything that the Kansas City Chiefs need, it just kind of figures out a way to fall in their lap. They lose Pacheco, who's out for a while, and then they sign Kareem Hunt, who's just been awesome for them. And then Rashee Rice goes out for the year, and it's like, let's go get DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, it's just, like I said, everything just kind of seems to fall their way. When we come back, here in 4 minutes. History was made last night. LeBron James, Bronny James played together. It's a big deal, whether you want to admit it or not. I've got thoughts on it when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a nice week. It's Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in. If you want to have a great ending to your week, do yourself a favor. Head over to IndySportsTicket.com. Bourbon and Birdies buy your tickets. I'll be there. Dan Dockich will be there. Show up, drink some really good bourbon, eat some really good food. It's happening at Back Nine Golf downtown. Imagine just a better version of Top Golf. That's what this is. Hit some golf balls. You get an hour in a bay with the purchase of your ticket and just a ton of great food and a ton of great bourbon as well. It's going to be an absolute blast. That is Saturday, October 26th from 11 to 3 o'clock. Once again, it's going to be a blast. Something that I wouldn't call a blast, but I would call historic happened last night. LeBron James and Bronny James made history. With 4 minutes left to go in the second quarter, LeBron James and Bronny James played basketball together. Okay, first time ever, a father-son duo shared the floor in the history of the NBA. On their first offensive possession, LeBron James launched and missed a three. Then Bronny James came back down, tried to play some defense. He ended up guarding Julius Randle, who scored pretty easily. Wasn't off to a great start. But everyone is talking about this today because it's a big deal. Okay, it is a truly historic moment. Okay, some people are going to take this opportunity to talk about LeBron James and his longevity, right? And how amazing his career has been, and on how, him playing with Bronny is just more proof that he's the best player ever, which isn't true, and all of these things, right? They're going to talk about how amazing the career has been and all that kind of stuff. Others will complain about nepotism. They'll say Bronny James shouldn't be in the NBA. He should still be in college. He should be in the G League. He only played like 3 minutes. He only grabbed 1 rebound. He was 0 of 1 shooting. He didn't really do anything. All that kind of stuff. I got to be honest. The Lakers used the 55th overall pick on him. I don't care. Okay? Whatever. Anyway. That's not what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about nepotism. I don't want to talk about the longevity, because those 2 points have been hammered home ever since we knew that this moment was going to take place. Instead, I would like to talk about how incredibly special this is. Like, this incredible moment doesn't happen without LeBron's longevity, and it doesn't happen without nepotism. Either way, the moment is incredible. The 2 minutes and 40 seconds that LeBron and Bronny shared the floor together was magical. It was magical. The energy in the building, every single time one of them touched the ball, just went up to a completely different level. Like, I could feel it at home. Like one of them would touch it and everybody would rise to their feet, and you could feel just like the nervous energy of, like, is one of them going to score? Is Bronny going to score? Is, LeBron going to have an assist to Bronny? Is Bronny going to throw an alley-oop to LeBron? Like what's going to happen here? Are we going to have this moment very similar to like Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. homering back to back? Like, is anything like that going to happen? I like just sitting at home on my couch at 11 o'clock at night or whatever time it was, like I could feel it, and it was really cool. Like you don't get energy like that in game 1 of an NBA season ever. Okay, and if Bronny had scored, he didn't, which sucks. Like, the roof would have come off that place. Okay, because that moment is incredible. What we witnessed last night is incredible and unprecedented. It had never happened before. The NBA has been around for 78 years, and this is the first time that we're seeing this. And chances are we will never see this again. As I watched last night, as I watched, the Lakers and the Timberwolves, and I just the moment when they both got up off the bench and they both walked onto the floor, I couldn't help but think about my dad. Like, I'm incredibly blessed to have the relationship with my dad that I do. I remember being in high school and like playing pickup basketball or two-hand touch football after church on Sunday with my dad. Like that felt special, because all my buddies, their dads were and still are just way older than what my dad is. Like, I'm 24. My dad's not even 50 yet. Okay, just for reference there. And so, having just a younger dad who was able to do stuff with me throughout my entire childhood and even now, like my parents, they're coming up here in the next few weeks, probably going to go and play some pickleball because that's something that I like to do, and that's something that my dad likes to do. And we're going to play. I'm going to absolutely wipe the floor with my dad because I'm way better than he is. I really hope he's listening right now. And like, that'll be special, right? Because there's just nothing like doing something that you enjoy with your dad. And for some reason, doing it as an adult, it just feels more special, right? And to do it at the highest level, like LeBron and Bronny are doing or did last night, is just incredible. And as someone, as a 24-year-old who doesn't have any kids, I'm sitting back and I'm listening to a lot of the conversation about LeBron James and how big of a deal this is for him. And I got to be honest, I have no way to relate to that because once again, I'm 24. I've been married for a year and I don't have any kids. Like, I have no idea what LeBron's feeling. So I want to focus on Bronny for a second because I think he's the figure in this who's not really being discussed very much. And last night for him, like, he didn't just play basketball with his dad and, for the Lakers. He also played in his first NBA game, which alone is a surreal feeling to put in all this work and to have your dreams come true. Okay, so like that alone is pretty surreal. But then you just take into the equation all of the things that have happened to Bronny, just over the last year or really throughout his entire life. Like, he went from playing one-on-one in his backyard with his younger brother Bryce and probably with his dad. And I'm sure they also played horse and they probably played 21. And so he did all that as a kid to then becoming a McDonald's All-American. And then he commits to USC, stays home, stays close to his family. And while he's at USC, he has a heart attack, right? And he misses a whole bunch of time, and then he shows up and, he plays a little bit of college basketball, but it wasn't really all that impressive. And part of it was because, like, the dude had a freaking heart attack and he just wasn't quite ready. And it didn't matter because his dad was like, you're coming out no matter what so that we can do this thing together. And now he's playing in the NBA. He had a heart attack last year. Now he's playing in the NBA. Like, that is incredible in and of itself. But then again, to step out on the floor for your first time as an NBA player with your dad is got to be just one of the most special things. And so congrats to Bronny. Congrats to LeBron. Hopefully things go well. More importantly, hopefully Bronny James has a long career in the NBA, right? That'd be great for him. I hope that happens. But in order for that to happen, Bronny James needs to be sent down to the G League because that is where he belongs. He's not an NBA player by any stretch of the imagination right now. But last night wasn't about that. Okay? Like, if I'm watching, ESPN or FS1 or whatever, and someone starts talking about how Bronny James isn't an NBA player yet, I'm going to turn it off because that's not what last night was about. Last night was about one of the best basketball players ever getting to share this incredibly special moment with his kid, and it's something that we will never get to see again, more than likely. It was incredibly special. It's over, though. Let's move on. We don't need to see this again, Lakers, because as I said, Bronny James isn't an NBA player quite yet. Okay, the best thing for Bronny James, and honestly, the best thing for the Lakers, is to send him down to the G League. You had the moment. You had the history. It was really cool. It's something that's going to live on in history for forever because for the first time in 78 years, for the first time in the history of the NBA, a father and a son shared the floor together. And that, whether you like LeBron James or not, whether you think Bronny James should be in the NBA or not, is incredibly special. Pacers, they play their first game tonight. Can't wait for this season to get underway. Over 47.5 feels like easy money. Team won 47 games last year. I expect for them to be good once again. Okay, so there's that. They play tonight, 7 o'clock against the Pistons, right? The AFC South, a lot going on there. This division's so bad. So bad. Like if the Colts can just win on Sunday, their chances at winning this division feel really good. So like I bet them to win the division at plus 450. Need them to win on Sunday for that to be a real possibility. They're an ugly 4-3 right now, but Houston's 5-2. It's one game better. They're incredibly injured right now. Okay, especially on defense. Like if there's a time to play the Houston Texans, it's right now. The Packers benefited from the injuries that Houston had last week. They also rushed the crap out of CJ Stroud. Like this Texans offensive line in terms of pass protection isn't very good. Okay, I think that further speaks to the idea that the Colts need DeForest Buckner back, right? To put some pressure on CJ Stroud, who's one of the better young quarterbacks in the NFL. Okay, CJ Stroud's coming off of an awful game, 10 of 21 for 84 yards. Like that's just like you can't be any worse than that. Well, that being said, he kind of has a history of playing well against the Colts, but no Nico Collins is such an advantage for Indianapolis. Okay, like we're going to watch the game on Sunday. And look, Stephon Diggs is a good player. He's a bit older. Like there's a reason, I think, outside of the off the field stuff as to why the Bills moved off of Stephon Diggs. He's just not as good. Like if you look at the number of targets that he had at the end of last year, like they quit throwing him the ball on purpose. Okay, they shifted the offense to focus a bit more on James Cook, and I think part of that is because Stephon Diggs just isn't as good as he used to be. Okay, so the Houston Texans, they're going to be hindered a bit on offense with no Nico Collins, their best receiver, right? So Colts, secondary should have a better chance of holding up. In addition to that, once again, this offensive line, not very good. They've got to find a way to stop Joe Mixon. That is the biggest thing heading into this game. Okay, he absolutely torched Indy the last time they played, right? Over 160 rushing yards. The Texans, as a team, rushed for over 200. Okay, like Gus Bradley, listen up, buddy. You better figure this thing out. Okay, congratulations. You stopped the Titans. You stopped the Dolphins, teams with bad quarterbacks, bad offenses. Congratulations. But guess what? Here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show, we don't forget that you gave up 37 to Jacksonville, and we haven't forgotten that you gave up 29 to Houston in week 1. Okay? Like if Gus Bradley wants the opinion on this Colts defense to shift and to change to a point where we have a little bit more faith in them. Like this is the week. This is the week to come out, hold Houston to like 20 points, give the offense a chance to win. And my opinion on the Colts defense will change. As of right now, I still think this Colts defense is bad. I still think that they can't stop the run. Like I still have no faith in this front seven unless Grant Stewart's on the field. That dude's awesome. Please continue to put him out there. Okay, 19 tackles last week. Pretty absurd. Okay, like this is a real opportunity for the Colts to not only, tie Houston and sit atop the division, but to also change the narrative around the team. Right? They're 4-3, but I don't think that people think that the Colts are very good, and they have a point because even though they're 4-3, they haven't looked very good. They've beaten bad teams. That's the reality of it right now. And the Colts have an opportunity on Sunday to kind of change the narrative around this team. And hopefully they do it. I think that they're going to have a chance to win. I'm glad that Anthony Richardson got a game under his belt before making his return. I think that's really going to benefit him going forward into this game. I still think part of why he struggled in the first half against the who they play on Sunday? I'm blanking here. Part of why he struggled in the first half last week was just because he hadn't played, and so he came out in that first half against the Dolphins, really struggled. Hopefully he looks a bit better this week. The defense he's playing, The secondary, at least, isn't quite as good. It's really banged up. Hopefully we get a good Sunday performance from him. Thanks for tuning in to The Real Jonathan Smith Show. The Dan Dockett Show follows me here in 5 minutes. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. Head over to YouTube. Subscribe to Indy's Sports Ticket. Watch the show there. Join the live stream. Hop in the chat. Give me your thoughts on everything that's going on. Follow me on Twitter as well at __ Jonathan Smith. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon to talk to you. The Dan Dockett Show starts here in about 4 minutes.